Ever feel like life is moving faster than you are? I did too. Hi, I'm Shannon. I've lost 100 pounds naturally and I've kept it off for 7 years. This is the Strong Journey podcast where we talk about taking life one step at a time. Here I share my ramblings about what worked, what didn't, and all the things I wish I knew along the way. The good, the bad, and yes, sometimes the ugly. If you're ready to start taking life one step at a time, hit subscribe and join me on this strong journey. For most of my life, fitness was something I visited. I would show up for a while. I would commit for a season. I'd pick a goal, a number, or a reason. Summer, a wedding, a dress, a vacation. There was always a deadline. And every single time, once I hit that goal or even got close, I stopped. Not because I didn't care, not because I was lazy, but because in my mind, fitness and weight loss were temporary projects, not a way of living. And when the project ended, I went right back to old habits. For years, my internal dialogue sounded like this: I just need to get to this weight, or I'll get serious again after this event. I can relax once I hit my goal. And I know I'm not alone in that. I know many women live this exact same mindset, consistently postponing their real life until they reach some imagined finish line. We're taught that very subtly that weight loss is something you do for a period of time, something you commit to temporarily, something you suffer through so you can eventually return to normal. It's framed as a challenge or a program or a phase, something to endure or push through and white knuckle your way, and then be done with it. So we treat it like a project with an end date, and we hold our breath and we tell ourselves, this is just for now. And because of that, we never actually build the life around the habits. We just borrow them for a while. Then, when the pressure lifts, when the event passes, when the scale hits the number, when the urgency fades, the structure disappears. The routines loosen. Old patterns quietly creep back in. And instead of questioning the framework we were given, we turn inward. We tell ourselves that we failed, that we lacked discipline, or that something must be wrong with us. But the truth is, we were never taught to become someone who lives differently, only to perform weight loss for a short window of time. And no one can sustain a performance forever. That's not a personal flaw. That's a flawed system. Here's what I didn't understand back then. And this is where behavior change really matters. Your brain does not wire itself around temporary effort. It doesn't adapt to things you do for now. It adapts to what feels familiar, repeatable, and safe. Your brain wires itself around identity and routine. So when you approach fitness or weight loss like a challenge with an end date, like a 30-day plan or a reset or a countdown to an event, your brain never actually integrates those behaviors. It treats them like a disruption, something to tolerate until life gets back to normal. And in the background, your brain is just essentially waiting for the pressure to lift, waiting for the rules to relax, waiting for permission to return to what feels familiar. And then the finish line arrives. The number is hit. The event passes. The urgency fades. And almost automatically, the habits dissolve, the old cues resurface, and the familiar patterns return. Not because you stopped caring, not because you suddenly became undisciplined, but because your brain was never taught that this is who you are now. It was taught that this is something you were temporarily doing. That's not weakness. That's not lack of willpower. That's biology doing exactly what it's designed to do: conserve energy, seek familiarity, and return to known patterns when the threat or pressure is gone. Real lasting change only happens when behaviors stop being conditional and start becoming part of your identity. When your brain no longer asks the question, when does this end? And starts to believe, this is just how I live now. And that shift changes everything. At some point, and it didn't happen all at once, I realized something that changed everything for me. I didn't want to lose weight just to stop. I didn't want to reach a goal and then immediately start counting the days until I slipped back into old habits. What I really wanted was to live differently. I wanted my choices to feel aligned instead of forced. I wanted my body to feel supported instead of managed. I wanted health to be something that was woven into my life, not something I turned on and off depending on a season or event. So I stopped asking myself, how fast can I get there? Because that question always led me towards extremes, urgency, and burnout. And I started asking a very different question. What kinds of habits will support the life I want to live now? That question didn't demand perfection, and it didn't require intensity. It invited honesty. It made me look at my real life, my schedule, my energy, my hormones, and my priorities, and choose habits that fit that, not some idealized version of myself. And once I started asking that question, the entire tone of my journey shifted. Weight loss stopped feeling like a battle that I needed to win. Fitness stopped feeling like something I had to survive. It became a process of care, of consistency, and of becoming someone who could actually stay. And that shift from urgency to alignment is finally what made everything stick. When fitness became about bettering myself instead of choosing a number, everything kind of softened. It stopped feeling like something I had to fight my way through. It wasn't about punishment anymore. It wasn't about pushing harder because I felt guilty. It wasn't about restriction, constantly telling myself no, and it definitely wasn't about urgency, that sort of frantic feeling of, I need to fix this now. Instead, it became something very, very different. It became about care, asking what my body actually needed and responding to that with respect. It became about consistency, doing things that I could repeat even on the hard days instead of burning myself out on the good ones. And it became about capability, building strength, building stamina and confidence, so my body felt like a place I could trust again. I wasn't trying to win at weight loss anymore. I wasn't chasing a finish line or a version of myself that I thought I had to earn. I was trying to build a body and a life that I could actually live in, one that supported me instead of exhausted me, one that felt steady instead of fragile. And when fitness shifted from something I was going to do to myself to something I was doing for myself, that's when it finally became sustainable. When you decide that fitness is for life, not just for a season, your choices begin to change almost automatically. You stop asking, what's the fastest way to do this? Because that question always leads to extremes and harder workouts and stricter rules, tighter timelines. And instead, you start asking more honest questions. Questions rooted in real life and not fantasy. You ask, what's realistic when life gets busy? Because life will get busy. Work, family, stress, hormones, unexpected curveballs. And then you start asking what works when motivation is low, because motivation will always ebb and flow. And you need habits that don't collapse the moment you feel tired or overwhelmed. And then you start asking, what can I come back to again and again? Not what's impressive, not what's extreme, but what's steady. That's the moment extremes lose their appeal, because you're no longer trying to prove something to yourself. You're no longer asking, can I survive this punished workout? You're no longer white knuckling your way through another plan or another reset or another phase. You're asking a much more important question. Can I live with this? Can this fit into my real life? Can this support me on my hard days, not just the good one? Can this be something I build on instead of something I escape from? And when the answer is yes, that's when change stops feeling temporary and it starts becoming who you are. This time, I didn't say to myself, I'll do this until I hit my goal, because I'd said that many, many times before. And I knew exactly where that led me. Instead, I said something very different. I'm building habits I don't want to quit. That one shift changed how I approached everything. It meant choosing movement I could repeat, not workouts I had to psych myself up for, movement that fit into my life, even on the tired days, movement that made my body feel stronger and more capable, not punished. It meant choosing food choices that I felt supportive and not restrictive, not rules that I couldn't wait to break, but ways of eating that gave me energy, steadiness, and trust in myself again. And it meant building routines that could survive real life, real stress, hormones, busy season, hard days, and everything in between. Because real life doesn't pause just because you're trying to get healthy. And yes, the weight came off. That part happened. But what mattered more is that the habit stayed. 7 years later, I'm not maintaining weight loss because I'm exceptionally disciplined or because I'm constantly on track. I'm maintaining it because this is just how I live now. These habits aren't something I'm forcing. They're not something I'm trying to finish. They're simply part of who I am, and that's why they last. Here's a reframe I really want you to sit with for a moment. You don't rise to the level of your goal. You fall to the level of your systems. Goals are exciting. They give you something to really aim for and look forward to. They do create momentum and hope, but they're also fragile because once the excitement fades or the goal is reached, there's nothing left to hold you. Systems, on the other hand, they're quiet. They're not flashy. They don't give you that rush of motivation, but they're strong. Systems are what you do on an ordinary Tuesday. They're what you fall back on when life gets busy, when stress is high, when motivation is low. They're the routines, the habits, and the structures that support you without requiring constant effort or decision making. When fitness becomes part of who you are, not something you're temporarily doing, it stops feeling fragile. It stops feeling like something you can lose the moment life throws you off course. Because when life gets hard, and it will, you don't quit. You don't spiral. You don't start over from scratch. You adjust. You scale back instead of stopping. You return to the basics instead of abandoning everything. You trust that consistency does not mean perfection. It means staying connected. And that's the real difference between temporary success and lasting change. Not willpower, not discipline, but systems that carry you forward, even on the days that you don't feel like it. I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself this. If I stopped trying to finish my health journey, what kind of habits would I want to live with? Not for a month, not for an event, but for your actual life. That answer matters more than any number on the scale. If you've ever lost weight and regained it, felt ashamed because it didn't stick, blamed yourself for needing to start all over again, I want you to hear this clearly. You didn't fail. You were chasing an outcome instead of building a lifestyle, and that can change. Fitness isn't for summer. It isn't for a dress. It isn't for a number or an event or a vacation. It's for life and capable in your own body, for aging well and for living longer and living better. You don't need to rush. You don't need to do this perfectly. You just need to take the next step and then the next and the next. That's your strong journey.